This is Michael Passmore, Senior Minister of Central Christian Church in downtown San Antonio, sharing on the third day of March our scripture lesson for the week that we're studying is the story of Jesus cleansing the temple as it appears in John's Gospel. It is right at the beginning of Jesus' ministry. He's just hasn't even gotten to the John 3:16 part, and in the second chapter, Jesus is fashioning a whip of cords and driving the money changers out of the temple in Jerusalem. An act of anger. It says Jesus was angry. Most of the time we think that anger is not a suitable emotion for people inside of the Christian faith, and we find excuses and reasons not to be angry. And I know that the anger of a person profits little, but there are times when anger just boils to the surface. Paul Harvey once told the wonderful story of a true story of a bank robbery in Oceanside, California. The bank robber entered a small bank and was wearing a motorcycle helmet covering his face, went up to a window after he picked the most likely person to give in to his demands. He handed a note to the woman behind the counter. She was in her 50-ish, and she read the note and bent down and started to pick up her cash drawer and pulled it out to give to the bank robber. And then she looked down at the note again, and her face turned red and her eyes flashed, and suddenly she reached and hit the bank robber over the head with the drawer of money. Money went flying everywhere, but she was over the counter and hitting the bank robber again and again and again, and the man had nothing to do but to turn and flee, the note saying your money or your life, but it was going to be his life. And finally he ran out the door and was captured then by the police officers. When they queried her afterwards about what made you decide to fight the bank robber, he had a gun, and her response was, in his note, there was a very naughty word. What makes you angry? What puts you over the top? I remember the story from my early days, hearing about the civil rights movement when Stokely Carmichael told of walking his niece towards school, and a Mississippi State trooper during the desegregation and resegregation history of our United States stopped his little niece from going to the school by placing his boot across her neck, 6 years old, and putting a gun in her ear and swearing a racial swear at her, saying she would never go to the school. It conditioned Stokely Carmichael to become an angry person who is given credit for fathering the phrase Black Power. He goes on to say, the knowledge I had then is not the knowledge I have now. You cannot trust that a white person has any capacity to give anybody else their freedom. And later he would say, only God grants freedom. It's a spiritual thing of the conscience. I don't know. Is there a time to be angry? Certain writer said there is a time when Christians ought to get angry about some of the iniquities and injustices in the world, and I completely agree. There are situations in life in which the absence of anger would be the essence of evil. But we must never allow anger to rule the day. Ultimately, our anger, although it rarely profits, can instigate the beginning of a dialogue, a resolution, a conviction, a change of heart. I think that my days of violence are largely over. I cannot be physically as violent as I used to be, and I try not to be as mentally or spiritually violent as I once was. I don't think it's just old age. I hope it's the Spirit of God working inside of me that will color more and more of these days of my ministry with the love of God in Jesus Christ, and the love of God that transforms into the lives of others. Thank you for letting me share with you this day.